When your only option to relieve yourself is to poop in a trash bag, sometimes you have to maliciously comply. We'll get into that in just a bit, but first, if you want me to do less work, just say so. My company was doing great with us all remote during the pandemic, but because it's run by a bunch of lemmings, after Amazon announced their RTO policy, ours instituted a RTO 3 days a week. My boss made the unilateral decision that we would need to be in the office from, let's just make something up, 9:30 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. Why those hours? Because those times work best for the boss man and his commute. The problem that I brought up immediately is that we work with people from all over the world, Western Europe and Asia, so if I need to meet with any of them, we normally do it as early as 6 a.m., so it sucks equally for us all. I mentioned to boss man that when I have an early call, I'll be starting my day in the office at the crack of dawn, and would leave once 8 hours is up. If you do the math, it's before 3:30 p.m., especially since I don't normally take a lunch. I do this because the other option we were given was to take the early meeting from home, then log off, get ready, commute, and work the remaining 7 hours in the office. That would extend my workday past 8 hours, and there's absolutely no work needed for such long hours. So this is what I was doing until Boss Dude confronted me about why I was leaving early so often. My early meetings happen at least 2 of the 3 in-office days. I cut him off and said, because I'm here as early as I need to be. I don't take a lunch, and I leave after working 8 full hours. I was told that I'm required to take an hour lunch during the workday, and that it did not count as time worked, basically trying to make me stay even longer each day. He kinda let the subject drop, but I reached out to IT and asked if I could be forced to work more than 8 hours per day just so I could sit and stare at my computer to make Boss Dude happy. HR informed me that Boss Dude can set required office hours and that I'm free to skip lunch, but it does not mean that I don't have to stay till 3:30. He also said that because I'm salaried, I can be required to work longer days if needed for business. Again, not the case. So here's where the malicious compliance comes in. My only required hours are those 6 hours, as long as my work is done, and any early morning calls or meetings. When I was starting in the office at 6 a.m., I was working a solid 8-hour day, but often had to come up with things to fill extra time. From here onwards, I'll take the earliest call or meeting from home, then do the log off and commute in for 9 a.m. thing. But I'm only required to be in work during those 6 hours, as long as my work is done, which it is. I'll work for 1 hour at home, I'll be in the office during the required 6 hours, because not taking lunch does not let me leave sooner. I'll be taking 1 hour off in the middle of the required hours. As a result, I'll now be working for 6 hours on days when I take an early meeting from home, and 5 hours on the other days. They wanted to micromanage us into not being motivated. I'll give them what they want. Also, hi, my name is Brendan, and if you enjoy these malicious compliance videos, it'd be awesome if you left a like or dropped a comment if you're listening to our podcast. That being said, our next story is Fix It Now! You got it, boss. I was working in a hotel in the UK as a lobby boy. My afternoon job was to handle guest requests for extra pillows, blankets, etc. The system worked like this. The guests informed the reception, the details were written in a notebook, like room XY, pillow, and every so often I checked the book, solved the problems, and ticked them off when done. One night, during dinner, the hotel boss wrote a note in the book. Room XXX, hot water tap is not working. I went to the room, checked it. Yep, not working. I went back and wrote in the book, can't fix it, call a plumber. On my next round, there was a new message, fix it now, underlined 3 times. Well, I went back to the room, checked the hot water tap again. In the UK, there are 2 taps on the sink, one for cold and one for hot. Still couldn't fix it. I tried a few things until somehow the pipe, the one from the wall to the sink, popped out and boiling hot water started pouring onto the floor at full force. Panic mode on. I grabbed the room phone and called the reception. Busy. So I sprinted through the hotel, the room was on the farthest side, jumped into reception and shouted, "Room XY! Plumber! Now!" Then I rushed back to the room. The water was still gushing out at full force, so I just sat on the edge of the bathtub, holding the pipe so that the water poured into the tub instead of flooding the floor. After about 3 minutes of this, the hotel boss peeked into the bathroom, went pale, and ran away. 5 more minutes passed. Then the fire alarms went off because of the steam. Fortunately, the staff already knew what was happening, so they told the guests it was a false alarm and didn't evacuate the hotel. Another 10 minutes later, they finally shut off the water supply for the entire wing of the hotel. A plumber arrived and fixed the tap in 3 minutes. Now came the fun part: cleaning. Surprisingly, there wasn't much water in the bathroom, considering the tap had been gushing for over 15 minutes. So I went 1 floor lower to see where all that water had gone. I entered the room's bathroom, switched on the light, but it was very dim. That's when I realized the bowl-shaped lamp cover on the bathroom ceiling was filled to the brim with water, with the light bulb happily sitting inside it. Oh crap. Light off. Drained the water from the lamp cover, mopped up that bathroom too, but still, it didn't seem like enough water for what had happened, so I went even lower. Below that bathroom, on the ground floor, there was a corridor. Luckily, not another room. But the ceiling had gotten so wet that it collapsed. A 2x3 meter section of it had come crashing down onto the carpet. After 15 minutes in a sauna-like bathroom, 30 minutes of cleaning and clearing the rubble, I finally stepped outside for some fresh air. That's when my roommate walked past, took one look at me, and asked, "Did someone puke on you?" Since then, whenever I say I can't fix something, they actually believe me and call a professional. Apple Blossom 1962 responded, "There's a judge on TV who says the cheap comes out expensive. It would have been cheaper just to hire the plumber in the first place. Now they have to worry about the wiring and the ceilings and the floors and all that. They have to worry about mold. This is going to be an expensive fix if they do it right." Lelketlin_Hinties responded, "As far as I know, a 30-pound cost to call the plumber went up to almost 100 pounds plus by calling the plumber on an emergency job. That's only the direct cost. As you said, the rest can be in the thousands." Our next story is, City's Cheap Overtime Policy Backfires, gives garbage collectors double the work. This was in the late 90s. My city decided to save a few bucks by not paying overtime to garbage collectors during the holidays. Instead of coming up with a reasonable solution, they told the garbage collectors to only pick up 2 bags per household, regardless of how much trash was actually out. Here's the kicker: there was no rule for residents. We could put out as many bags as we wanted. The city didn't bother communicating anything to us. So when Christmas came, which fell on a Thursday, one of the usual garbage days, so no trash pickup, everyone put out their mountain of holiday trash like normal. Wrapping paper, boxes, leftovers, whatever didn't fit in the bins was bagged and sent to the curb. The following Monday, another trash pickup day, garbage collectors, following orders, only took 2 bags per house. The rest just sat there. By the end of the week, the streets looked like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie, with bags piled high on curbs and sidewalks. The result? Absolute chaos. Some houses had 10+ bags sitting out. The garbage collectors have no choice but to haul it all away because, let's be real, there was no way this backlog was going to fix itself. In the end, the city ended up paying overtime anyway because the backlog from 1 week of savings was impossible to clear in regular shifts. Instead of saving money, they gave the garbage collectors twice the work and had to scramble to deal with the mess. Budgies Are the Best replied, "I'm not familiar with your garbage regulations. Do the collectors take all the trash, no matter if it's in a garbage can or next to it? Do they charge extra for every bag? Where I live, they only empty the cans. If you have more, you have to buy special bags from the city. One costs $2.50. What's not in a garbage can or in such a bag will never be collected." Our next story is, You Better Start Making More Sales. Back in the sun-soaked streets of Phoenix, Arizona, my 14-year-old self squints gleefully into the window of a greasy Chevy Impala, rolling down as slowly and choppily as OP's writing. It's time to sell some candy. I hop into my new favorite escape from my life of picking up cigarette butts for my father, rife with opportunity. My job was to sell boxes of cheap candy that my boss, Al, got from who knows where. We sold the candy door to door, an army of tweens driven around by someone triple their age. $5 to $6 a box was our price. $1 a box was our profit. Al got the rest. One weekend, he drove us way away from our usual spot, thrust us into Awadaki, a prominent neighborhood with lush houses. Al expected big things of us. The day was hot and grueling. That bright, shiny day quickly turned into a sweaty hellscape, ending in anger and the disappointment of only selling 3 boxes. Al was furious. He picked us up from our drop-off locations and drove us to another neighborhood in Ottawaukee. He reamed us, insulted us, and accused us of not trying. The truth was that it was just brutal in every way. People were on vacation. The only people answering was the occasional hired help, and he didn't care. He demanded for us to start making way more sales. Enter Malicious Compliance. The next neighborhood he dropped us off in was about a quarter mile from a convenience store. We took the cash he had from our original sales and bought a bunch of cheap candies from the convenience store. We resold those dollar Thin Mints at a significant markup. We kept the extra cash and occasionally sold 1 or 2 of his candies only because people saw them in our box of candies and chose those. Each of us had about $30 cash for ourselves and 20 or so for Al. We made more sales all right. Al just didn't know how much more. Update. One more detail. This started a plan where we brought a bunch of our own personal things to sell for 100% profit, like little toys and baseball cards. It was our most lucrative summer, mine anyways. DSXL2 responded, I did basically the same thing in high school. A popular fundraiser for extracurriculars was selling special, cheap candy bars for $1 each. I'm old, candy bars were normally maybe 50 cents. There was a grocery store not far from the high school. I'd walk over, buy 6 packs of real candy bars from brands people actually heard of. A 6-pack of Snickers would be about $2. Resell them for the same $1 per bar, and blow the profits on magic cards. Our next story is Malicious Compliance. I used to work at a mid-sized company where our department had its own supply closet. Everyone knew the rules. Take what you need, don't hoard, and keep the area tidy. Simple enough, right? Apparently not for our new micromanaging office manager, Karen. Karen was obsessed with cutting costs. She'd swoop in like a hawk every morning, inspecting the supply closet. If a box of pens was a little lighter or the Post-its weren't perfectly aligned, we'd get a stern email about unnecessary consumption. She even implemented a sign-out sheet for supplies. Want a highlighter? Better justify it in writing. One day, Karen decided to escalate. She put a lock on the supply closet and declared herself the sole key holder. If anyone needed something, they had to email her and wait for her to approve the request. This was, of course, on top of her other duties, so getting a new pen could take hours. Needless to say, productivity started to suffer. Cue Malicious Compliance. A coworker of mine, Tom, was a bit of a prankster but always stayed within the rules. He decided to test Karen's new system to its limits. Every time he needed something, no matter how small, he emailed Karen. Need a single paperclip? Email. Need to replace a dried out marker? Email. Stapler jammed? You guessed it. Email. Tom's meticulousness inspired the rest of us. Soon, the entire department was flooding Karen's inbox with individual requests. Since Karen insisted on handling every single one personally, she quickly became overwhelmed. Approving requests started taking days instead of hours. Meetings were delayed because people didn't have notebooks. Presentations stalled because someone was waiting for a dry erase marker. Management started noticing the bottleneck. Our department's performance metrics were plummeting, and everyone pointed the finger at the supply chain fiasco. Karen tried to defend her system, claiming we were being wasteful and needed structure, but the evidence was clear. Her micromanagement was backfiring. After a particularly disastrous week, upper management stepped in. They not only revoked Karen's authority over the supply closet, but also gave her a formal reprimand. The lock was removed, the sign-out sheet disappeared, and we went back to the honor system. Karen, humiliated, kept a low profile after that. As for us, we may have lost a week of productivity, but the petty satisfaction of watching Karen drown in her own bureaucracy was worth every second. Part of Breakfast replied, hilariously, something similar happened to my mom. The supply closet at her job kept getting cleaned out by people taking things home, and memos from management didn't help. So they did a key and sign-out system. They asked my mom to be one of the key holders since her duties weren't client-facing. She was janitorial staff, and it would be easier for her to go to open the closet. But one of the other key holders was one of the worst offenders for stealing, and my mom could see the writing on the wall. So she said she would be the key holder for the supply closet if she had the only key. Management refused, Mom refused a key, and the stealing continued. Only nobody got fired for it, because the stealing key holder was the sister-in-law to the manager. Mom correctly predicted she would be blamed and fired, and she noped out of the situation entirely. Our next story is, any units? This one actually got done to me yesterday. We had some material that I knew we were going to use more of than projected, so I told the person using it to cut the lengths you actually need and then measure the rest and let me know how much is left. Now, for various reasons, our system uses a wild mix of measurements. There's almost no way to know in advance whether something like this will be measured in inches, feet, meters, or millimeters. So, intending to save both of us some trouble, I told him any units are fine, I can convert them easily. I realized what I'd said about 2 seconds later and tried to clarify any normal units. So she brought me the measurement in Roman cubits, and then, once we both had our laugh, gave me the sheet in millimeters that he'd converted from. Our next story is, heavy fines for running the red lights made people not move even in emergency situation. So Vietnam just implemented a new law that fines heavily people who don't comply by traffic lights. About 5 to 20 million dong, which is about 1 to 2 months of average wage here. This causes situations where even when there is an emergency situation, like an ambulance or a fire truck needs passing through, many people just won't move to let those cars pass by. Some comments on the internet even said they would rather let a stranger die than let their family be hungry. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's malicious for sure. There are, of course, rules that stated if you disobey traffic rules in emergency situations, you won't be fired, but it seems like many people won't risk it or they just don't know the rules that well. I personally would move for emergency vehicles, so I'm not exactly thrilled with this. King_Neptune07 replied, "This happened to me once. I was sitting at a red light in New Jersey when an ambulance came up behind me with lights flashing, siren, the whole 9 yards. I moved into the intersection to let the ambulance pass. A few weeks later, I got a ticket in the mail. It even had a photo of my car, and the ambulance can clearly be seen behind the car with the lights flashing. It was an automated ticket and no human ever bothered to look at the picture. They just automatically gave me the ticket." Edit. I didn't go into court to fight it. I filled out some kind of form that was included with the ticket and sent it back. I never heard from them again. I don't know if the ticket was dismissed or not. Fortissimo responded, "Almost the same in the Netherlands. At camera-monitored red lights, you'll get a ticket in the mail, but most of the time the system or person detects the emergency vehicle before sending and you won't get it. Or when they notice you just crossed a line and didn't cross the crossing, they take 2 pictures here. But when you get the ticket, you have to mail them to explain what happened, and sometimes you have to ask the emergency service for a log to prove your point. But our emergency vehicles often just go against traffic, when safely possible, to get around traffic lights too." Our next story is, "Now you can call me every single time." For reference, this took place back in the late 90s. I'd imagine school systems work much different at the high school level now, and my kids aren't that old yet. Okay, so it was my senior year of high school, and I had just enough credits in my junior year to graduate. I'd taken martial arts and taught it too, so I got an extra gym credit early. I changed my mind because I wanted to graduate with my friends. So I just loaded up my schedule that year with whatever I wanted or I thought would look good to colleges. A few AP courses like US Gov, Physics, Anatomy, and Physiology, and some random stuff. The APs were a lot of work, and I had good test scores from the year already, and I wasn't looking to get lower scores on classes I didn't care about, so I dropped Physics and Gov and a random Jewelry 2 class. So I had 3 open periods a day surrounding lunch. It was magical. And I still had 1 AP class, so I thought I wasn't messing around too much. Both my parents worked, so we didn't know anything was amiss, till we realized we had a broken answering machine. Again, it was the 90s. Apparently, my school was calling 3 times a day, every day, to tell us I wasn't showing up to some study hall class I had been assigned to after I dropped the few classes. This hadn't happened other years, as it would just be a free period. The funny part was the woman calling us was kind of a bench about it. After the first few days, the messages started to get nasty, yet no one said a word to me in the school, nor was anything sent home. This is also around the time my mom was starting her retirement from being a hairstylist, so she'd do like a week on and a week off, and now she was getting the calls. So she tells the woman she's okay with it, his grades are good, technically he could have graduated already, college apps are already out, so no biggie. Oh, that was apparently the wrong thing to say to this lady, cause she read my mom the riot act, going on about how irresponsible we all were and how she was personally going to tank my applications. How could I be so brazen? Etc, 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 etc. Crazy level of overreaction. Plus, she wouldn't stop calling for every single class despite my parents' approval. Repeated calls to the school, and eventually they showed up face to face. It was by law that they had to report unpre-approved truancy, so my mom sat down on it. They wouldn't accept their word over the phone or even face to face that I was allowed to leave, as I had previous years without issues. They wanted something in writing. I don't think any of it was legal or necessary because the lady was telling my parents they had to put all kinds of stuff like they knew they were being detrimental to my learning, were essentially bad parents, etc, etc, etc. Just crazy stuff. So my mom gets an idea. She says 100% they aren't writing anything like that. She looks it up and it's a law that if a student has an unexcused absence, they have to notify the parents. So she started playing dumb, making this lady call her up every single period I missed. Then she would hem and haw about, do I allow him to miss this period or is it a problem? Let me think. Then she'd say, make sure, it's okay, this one time. But to call me if he misses anything else because I'm not sure how I'd feel if he missed more, knowing full well I was missing 3 periods a day every day until I graduated. They finally stopped calling like a month before I graduated. It was a solid 5 months of my mom messing with this woman named Sarah. Foil_K responded, as a parent of a kid who will be in a very similar position next year, a high school junior right now, heavy AP classes, but plans to make their senior year light, I find this absolutely hilarious. I'd probably do exactly the same as your mom. Stendhal Syndrome replied, I'd imagine you now will have to fight the school trying to force your kid in some sweatshop for the school versus actually having periods off. Sweet, sweet capitalism. Naive_P4475 replied, I don't know about everywhere, but they have senior late arrivals early dismissal for students who have extra class periods and no requirements left. Students have to apply, but I don't hear of it being turned down. I'm sure there are exceptions for extreme behavior, etc. I know students who leave after 2 or 3 classes. Those students work jobs. My oldest did a teaching pathway and had 3 more class periods as a student teacher senior year. My second had senior late arrival that he used as a study hall, went in on time, plus did an academy and had a double block graphic design internship, and graduated with a full portfolio. My third will have 2 required classes, could still graduate this year, but he does not want to. And my fourth, sophomore now, well, she just has a ridiculous number of classes she chooses, including an academy and continuing with her foreign language past the 2nd year. She's doing dual credit in the summers to make room. All of mine did or do that. Our district officers a lot of pathways with certifications and academies, so we're fortunate. I will say, students just can't be hanging out anywhere during an open time, for good reason, lol. And they're on top of that because of hookups, etc. Late arrivals that come early have to be in the cafeteria or library, or another approved place. My son went to a table in his academy hall to work. Others get permission to do other things, like essentially audit classes. Our next story is, it will be fine, you can just come over here to poop. So my parents bought the river/stilt house next to their house for me to move into to help me out in a number of ways. That's super awesome and I'm forever grateful. However, my mother doesn't like to always think things through and rush them, and God forbid you disagree with her. So it happened that, apparently, I just had to get moved to the river house before this recent blizzard hit or the world would fall apart or something. Okay, fine. But the problem is that the previous owner died halfway through renovating the place, and it doesn't have functional water and sewer. But my mother, in her infinite wisdom, decides that it doesn't matter and that I can just walk next door to my parents' place every time I need to use the bathroom until my dad finishes getting the water and sewer done. She said he would finish it the day or the next after I officially got moved. And then she said the quote that is the title. Well, I know my dad, and that was never gonna happen. And while I'm no stranger to having to pee in a bucket or in a hole in the ground when camping, needing to poop and having to do it in a trash bag in a bucket and then having to deal with that is something that I just do not want to have to do. I've been here 4 days now, and while I try to not eat or barely eat over the weekend, I got moved Saturday before the storm hit, in hopes my dad would be able to finish the water or sewer. All of the outside stuff is done. Just needs the inside the house stuff done. On Sunday or Monday, that didn't happen. So I finally had to eat some actual food and not just candy to keep my blood sugar up come Monday and Tuesday, cause I was starting to get super woozy and dizzy. Well, it's 0100 in the middle of the night, now I wake up with nature frickin' calling. So as quickly as I could without having an accident, threw my outside gear on, it's currently almost 0 Fahrenheit at my house outside, to run over to my parents' house next door, only to discover that their door wouldn't open. The handle would turn, but the door wasn't budging. It was stuck because it was frozen, so I proceeded to use my old cop knock from my EMS days to get one of them to open up, because I'm about to crap my pants right there on their porch at this point. My mom comes and opens up the door a second later, thank Jeebus, and tries to lecture me that I didn't need to scare her and dad awake at 1 a.m. Meanwhile, I'm running to their bathroom while pulling my pants down and just loudly yelled, "I got a frickin' crap, and I ain't using a trash bag!" After taking care of business, I went to go back to my new house, and my mom mentions that maybe she shouldn't have had me move before the water/sewer was hooked up. I will continue to not give a crap about waking her up at night if I need to take care of business. She said I could come over anytime I needed to do so to use their bathroom, and it's not like I can schedule when my body needs to do its thing to only happen during normal waking hours. Oh well. Maybe now she might actually start to listen when people try to point out why she shouldn't rush certain things. It probably won't happen, but a girl can dream. Edit to add. I'm paying my parents back for this new house once my old house sells, with the proceeds left over after the mortgage is taken care of. The new house is a stilt house on a riverbank that they got for only $20K. It's not like they just bought me a house outright to give to me, and the move easily could have waited another week. The old house was completely livable. Mom is just irrationally impatient about things and doesn't listen to others at all when she gets an idea in her head about how things should go. Rob71788 replied, "What a train wreck. Please explain on why you didn't push back on moving into an unlivable house. Was your previous situation dire? Definitely awesome of them to buy you a place, but I'm sure it could have waited a week over this." Glowing_trash_panda replied, "My previous house is completely livable and I was content staying there until this new place was ready. The plan is to pay my parents back for this place once the old place sells, with whatever money is left over after paying off the mortgage on the old place. They got this new river house for only $20K. It's admittedly a steal. But trying to be rational with my mother is just not a thing that works. Once she gets an idea in her head, there's no arguing with her unless you want your life to become a living heck for the foreseeable future until she gets her way. She wants to get my old house listed and sold ASAP, even though me getting moved this week doesn't make that happen faster, considering the winter storm has prevented us from getting back out there to start cleaning it up to list it in the first place. Good luck trying to reason with someone that doesn't listen to anybody else at all ever, though. And with that being said, that is all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed today's video, drop a like and comment below, and if you want to check out our other videos, click the video on the right. With that being said, I'll see you all next time.